What's the difference between FBI and the CIA?
The CIA looks at the FBI as a bunch of Boy Scouts.
Chris Voss.
Christopher Voss.
International kidnapping negotiator.
Retired FBI special agent.
And a hostage negotiator.
And a member of the Joint Terrorist Task Force.
FBI hostage negotiator.
The author of a phenomenal best-selling book entitled Never Split the Difference.
Have you ever met a terrorist whose logic actually made sense?
No. Compromises lose-lose. Emotionally, when you compromise, you feel you've lost something.
Where is it appropriate to lose your shit?
I don't think it ever is. The real problem is not the execution of the hijacking. The real problem is, are you going to chicken out? If you're a hostage negotiator, you work enough cases, things are going to go bad.
If you were to buy more time and the person gets shot, do you process that as blood is on your hands?
I never felt that the blood was on my hands. Every single time I have ever lost my shit, I've regretted it and felt I made things worse. If you're being recruited to be a suicidal guy, you're probably the screw up of the family. Your family's sick of your nonsense.
We don't really have a
Very nice.
Chris Voss with Voss Water.
That's right.
We're actually sponsored by Voss Water, so it works out well.
I love it. You know, I've been walking around with their water bottles as long as I can remember.
I bet you tell girls that this is your family, this is your business.
You know, I don't. I get asked that a lot, and and what I always tell people is I've been trying to convince them that I'm a long lost relative, but they're not buying it. I'm a distant cousin.
This is cousin. Okay.
Yeah, no, they're not buying it.
So I used to live in New York, by the way.
Nice.
I used to live in Gramercy, 18th and 3rd.
Okay, yeah. What years?
2022. I was there for 9 months, maybe 10 months. Not long.
Did you love it?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's the best, isn't it?
There's a pace there. There's a pace. There's a grit. There's a resilience. But you know, the kind of three cities in the U.S. that draw different types, and I've been in all three: L.A., New York, and D.C. And each are competitive for their own reasons. And what I loved about New York is, like, flat out, if you want to be the best, New York's your city.
Yeah. I mean, for me, New York, every time I left the house, it was a circus. Wasn't it? Isn't it just always a circus? By the way, the best park in the world is Washington Square Park.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And then it's a circus there.
It's a circus. Washington Square Park looks like the end of a festival. Everyone's coming down off a drug, doing weird shit.
Wearing crazy clothes.
Yeah, like climbing trees.
Probably, you know, playing guitars and singing, you know, in little groups, all sorts of stuff, right?
Smoking weed and just, it's just a real... Bob Marley would have enjoyed that park, put it that way.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful place. I do miss it. Where do you live now?
Vegas.
Oh, you live in Vegas?
After, I went out to L.A., got a 4-year dose of it, and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But then it was time to go someplace where there were no state or local taxes. And went there mostly for tax purposes. I imagined it would be a cool place to be a single guy. It is not. Because, you know, the smartest, most attractive women in the world are not going to Vegas. There are smart and attractive women there that are from there. But as far as attracting people, you know, New York and LA attracts.
Yeah.
And so when I got there, I started looking for apartments in LA and New York after I'd been in Vegas for a month. And then a pandemic came in, I got locked down. And then I met my girlfriend, I'm in a committed relationship. She's a New York girl who lives in LA. And then perfect. I got a steady relationship, and then I bought a really nice house, much more house than I ever would have got in Vegas or in LA. And it's a great place now because I travel all the time.
Would it be smart to tell an ex-FBI agent that his girlfriend's beautiful?
She is. She absolutely is. So it ain't a bad thing.
You're really good with your words. I can see that.
Yeah, you know, when people say, "Gee, but look at her. He's a negotiator." Just take a lead from him, man.
Yeah. Read his book.
What's that?
Read his book.
Oh yeah.
Read his book.
Look at who he walked in with. Read his book.
You should actually do a book about picking up women.
Well, it might be a book about because I believe in long-term relationships of trust. So if that's your goal when you meet women, then it would work.
Mm.
And yeah, that's what the Never Split the Difference is about, really about long-term trusted relationships. Because that's the most prosperous anyway.
Yeah.
You know, Goldman Sachs exec from way back when, I don't know when, said, greedy, yes, but long-term greedy.
Mm.
You want to prosper long-term, you need to have colleagues, people on your team that are there for the long haul.
Mm.
They got to trust you.
Mm.
So,
I mean, a lot of what you do can also correlate with picking up women.
it ain't, in point of fact, it ain't that far off. Neil Strauss, who wrote the book The Game, is a friend.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. And I like Neil a lot. And The Game, his original intent was about picking up women, which him and his buddies ultimately found, if that's the only objective, incredibly empty and unsatisfying. And it destroyed some of them. And then on the other end, Neil found, substantive relationships were far more satisfying. Like every guy out there wants to pick up every woman that walks, right?
Yeah.
That's your fantasy. But then the guys that started doing it, the whole crew that were around him, and he writes about it in The Game. And then, I think his following book is The Truth, something like that. Both of them are worth reading. Like the guys he started out with, at the end of the book, one of his main buddies is suicidal. He's got to go in with this guy to a local hospital because this guy wants to kill himself because his existence is so empty and so unfulfilling. But he talks about, you want to connect. Great hints in there on how to connect, because women want to meet guys who want to connect, who are actually interesting. The really fascinating thing that I took away from Neil's book, most guys figure women are just after good-looking guys. What they're after is interesting guys. And if you're going to be boring, you might as well be good-looking. Because if you're going to bore her, at least you got something to look at. And Neil, who kind of looks like Woody Allen, proved that if you can actually hold a conversation and you're actually interesting, you can beat the good-looking guys to women all day long because they're looking for a guy who's actually interesting. He did an appearance on Kimmel, and it's kind of funny because Neil comes out and Kimmel looks at him and kind of looks down on him and is starting to make fun of this geeky dude. What do you think? You're picking up chicks. You're a geek. So I think it's Jessica Alba's also on the show. And Neil is sitting next to Jessica Alba and Kimmel, and as soon as Kimmel starts busting his chops, Neil just kind of turns and engages Jessica Alba, and she's not used to a guy actually being interesting. So pretty soon, Jessica Alba's ignoring Jimmy Kimmel to talk to Neil, and it's hysterical. So anyway, there are overlaps in the communication, which is what you brought up with initially. That's true.
I gotta watch that. That video you just mentioned.
Oh, it's fascinating.
I mean, from my studies with women, which is not that extensive, but I feel like they like character.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you worth talking to?
Yeah.
And, in point of fact, no matter how hot this chick is, at some point in time, you're going to want to have a conversation with her. You're going to want to be around her.
Yeah.
And actually, in a relationship I'm in, she's a great human being. And she's smart and she's creative and she's an entrepreneur. And, I made this pretend list of all these qualifications, which was kind of like a supermodel, independently wealthy who could cook. And she owns her own house and she's real good looking.
Yeah.
And then she sprung on me that she could cook. And I'm like, now what am I going to do?
You hit the jackpot on that one.
I hit the jackpot.
Yeah. You got lucky on that one. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you got lucky. I think you deserved it as well.
I think if any guy, if you're on a journey through life, you have some bad relationships, you make some mistakes, you screw up with some girls, you're a jerk in either on purpose by accident. But you keep going, you're gonna find somebody that's just amazing, and it's just a matter of not giving up.
Well, you know how they say women fall in love with what they hear. And obviously you have been trained at the highest level to watch what you say.
Oh, yeah.
So women fall in love with what they hear. And who better than you to give them what they want to hear?
Yeah, you know, and it is short term and long term. Like if you're not walking the talk, they're going to figure it out.
Sure.
You know, if you're not actually interested in it,
Sure.
you don't actually care about them. They, you know, they want you to be interested. They want you to be funny, you know, because why not? I mean, you want them to be interesting.
Yeah.
You know, you don't, again, that's why this whole myth of, you know, there are a lot of good looking guys out there, super good looking guy. You know, they're going to make it a point to, you know, they're not going to dress that nice. They're going to be really casual. And they're going to say, yeah, you know, ain't no point. You know, I get girls and I just wear t-shirts and blue jeans. They're trying to hold the competition down. Yeah. They're trying to get you to buy that you don't have to actually have a sense of style. One of the things that Neil found out was, if I actually have a sense of style, if I don't walk around in sweatpants, girls are going to be like, oh, this dude might be interesting. So
it's true.
I know I'm giving Neil a commercial right now.
Well, also, I've never seen a podcast where anybody has asked you a question about picking up women. And I feel like that's a shame because I feel like, A, you're proven to know what you're doing, right? Based on the results. And B, you're a master when it comes to language. And C, we're just trying to get some gems from you so we can learn. So tell us the game.
All right. So, well, I give you one.
Okay.
And again, the intent here is, if you want to connect and you want a girl who's substantive. We got this thing called no-oriented questions, where you ask a question where you're driving for the word no. Because saying no makes people feel safe and protected. You know, if I say, would you like to make more money? Would you like to travel the world in 5-star hotels? Of course you do. But you know, I'm setting up a trap as soon as I start asking you yes-oriented questions. Would you like to be one of the greatest negotiators in the world? You know that I'm trying to get you to buy my book. It's coming. So if you see a girl attractive, she looks interesting, you want to have a substantive conversation with her, say, have you given up on finding the man of your dreams?
I need to write this down. Okay.
And what's she going to say?
No.
Most likely she's going to say no. If the answer is yes, then like, all right, you know, things must have been tough. You must have been hurt. You know, what's going on? You know, be actually interesting. It's a lot less complicated than a lot of people realize. Yeah. You know, the great one, another great pickup line. Hi, I'm Chris. That's it.
That's it.
Because they're used to, hey, baby, you're so beautiful, must be an angel. Oh, you know, you must be tired. You've been walking through my mind all day.
You're giving away my game right now.
Well, they've heard that stuff.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you give them your name and you just sit and wait, they have the option to respond. They're going to respond. And you just went from being some guy to somebody with a name. So, and then you're not on this big hustle. Mm. So just give them your name and smile and wait for them to react. And you're not threatening. You're not hustling. Like, you could have a great line, but what are you going to say after that?
Can I tell you my line?
Yeah, let's hit it.
You approach and you say, are you in the position to be hit on right now? Oh, no. Are you open to be hit on right now?
Okay. Fair enough. Not bad.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, you know, in a lot of ways, it's actually respectful.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you're signaling it's playful. There's something cool about that. I'm sure that when you say that, you give them a smile. You say it in a playful, upbeat way, which also is a great way. You could be warm about it as long as you say it warm. It's joking. And then there's probably a fair amount of like, if you drop that on a girl, where is she when you say that? Where do you imagine?
Probably at a bar.
Where is she at the bar?
At the bar.
Exactly. Like
a lounge, not a nightclub where it's loud.
Right. Depending upon where they are in the bar is already a signal of an intention.
Got it.
If they're at the bar, they know they're sitting at the bar. That's a bit of a signal. Now, if they're sitting at the bar and they're staring at the bartender, they're there with this guy. Chick sitting by herself at a bar late at night, she ain't there to meet guys. She's got a relationship with the bartender, or she wants to, and she get ready for this guy to get off work. So, but earlier in the evening, lady sitting at the bar, she knows she's sitting at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
She knows this is sort of like a high traffic, high target area. So based on that fact, if she's by herself and you're not a jerk, she's open to an approach.
Mm-hmm. As
you approach, she's going to look at the bartender to see if he flinches. Because if he's throwing off negative vibes, then you've been that creep that's hanging around the bar and driving women away and cutting down on his tips and all this bad news. But she's going to pick up on a lot of stuff, and the fact that she's sitting at the bar means if you're not a jerk and you're playful and you look like you could be interesting, she's probably open to an approach.
The game is changing so much when it comes to women, because I've got friends that actually screenshot messages that women send them and they put it into ChatGPT and says, hey,
what's this mean?
ChatGPT?
And ask ChatGPT.
And say, I like this girl, give me a clever, funny response to this. and I know, and I got one friend who's in a relationship with her, and he goes, when we were in the text stage, she was talking to AI the whole time.
It's a crazy world, man, how the world's evolved.
But see, now they're not exercising that part of their brain.
No, they're not. Nobody is.
Right?
Yeah. At some point in time, you're going to be staring at each other. Don't know what to say.
Don't know what to say.
Yeah, maybe you discover something interesting about each other in the meantime. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I haven't even started my questions yet. That was just a personal thing that I wanted to know how you do it. What's the difference between FBI and the CIA?
There's so many ways I could answer that. CIA is a tough job to be in. And if you're good at it, a lot of them don't last, because to be in the CIA is, by definition, you're lying about everything all the time. And that can be really tough on people. It's hard for the fundamentals of what you do to be deception and lying. And this need to know, like, it's a tough job. Not everybody's, it sounds sexy, but not everybody's built. Like even the CIA guys that I worked with who were openly CIA in DC, because we're in DC and we got to collaborate. And so they're not technically undercover. I knew that their last name was not their last name. And it is not that unusual for somebody to come out of the CIA having masqueraded as somebody in the State Department for their entire life. And they retire and they tell their kids for the first time, well, I never worked for State Department the whole time that you've grown up, the last 20 years. Number one, yeah, I didn't do what you thought I did. And number two, here's what your last name really is. And so that's hard. And so, and not a bureau, the CIA looks at the FBI as a bunch of Boy Scouts. And that ain't a bad accusation. Because as a general rule, we believe in telling the truth. We believe in upholding the Constitution. And we don't believe in bending the rules in order to protect the country. So the Bureau guys were cops. We're law enforcement guys. They're not into deception. Long time ago, at one point in time, a gentleman named Terry Anderson was the longest held American hostage that had ever been kidnapped. Unfortunately, he no longer holds a record, and Terry died probably about 2 years ago. He was held in Beirut, Lebanon by Hezbollah in the 80s. When he got out, he met his 6-year-old daughter for the first time. Wow. Consider that.
Yeah.
His fiancée was pregnant when he got grabbed, and he was held for over 6 years. Terry rolls out. He's got a relative cousin that's NYPD. The first time I crossed paths with Terry is at NYPD hostage negotiation trainer. They bring Terry in to talk about his experience being kidnapped by Hezbollah and being held for 6 years. And he says, yeah, well, when I got out, both the CIA and the FBI wanted to interview me about my experiences. And he said, I don't mind talking to the FBI because those guys are cops. They're good guys. I didn't like the CIA. And so that's a real good contrast. FBI guys basically are cops, enforce the law. Somebody like the CIA thinks we're a bunch of Boy Scouts. Mm-hmm. And we look at them and we know that they ain't telling us the truth about something because they need to know nonsense. And then the people, I know some agents that left the CIA early because they were great agents and they were good people and they just couldn't live with lying about everything all the time. And they had to get out. So it's not unusual for a CIA agent to leave early because it's hard to lie all the time. And Bureau guys rarely leave early. So that might be an indicator of, the environment that you're asked to be in.
So it sounds like to me that CIA is more international political affairs, while FBI is more domestic affairs.
That's theoretically the idea, but the bad guys don't draw those kind of lines and play by those rules the same way everybody else does. So when you're the Bureau, you're going to have bad guys you're chasing inside the U.S. who are operating outside the U.S. And when you're the CIA, there's going to be people you're gathering intel on that are going to be overlapping and coming into the U.S. And you gotta stay on top of your own investigations, your own cases. You got to chase your own bad guys. So the lines get blurred a lot. And then consequently, there's got to be a lot of cooperation.
Sure. But with CIA, you got undercover agents and things like that. With FBI, do you have undercover?
We got undercover. It's tough to be undercover. It's really hard. And in law enforcement, being undercover is so hard that there's usually a whole crew of their psychologists and their supervisors, because being undercover and lying all the time is just hard on your soul. Mm. And that's kind of what the CIA guys are tasked to do on a regular basis. And I can remember a number of years ago, there was a journalist that was very pro-law enforcement, pro-military, pro-U.S., and he was thinking about, he wanted to do so much to help the country. He worked counterterrorism in a congressional office, and he was so pro-America, and he thought about joining the CIA because he wanted to continue the mission to battle terrorism. And it was a CIA guy who was telling me about this at the time, came up to him and said, you can do that, but you can never go back. If you join the agency and you go in that environment, you can never go back. And that was kind of like, if your profession becomes lying and holding back information and being leery of everybody, that's going to change you in a way that you can never return to. And so he didn't go. We're working a terrorism case, First World Trade Center bombing, which I realized was like 10,000 years ago. I'm old. We figure out that the CIA is holding out on us in a big way. After the bombing, we're investigating the case. We're in pursuit of some guys that ultimately want to blow up 4 other things in New York. We stopped a plot that we're going to blow up 2 tunnels, the UN and the FBI office. And we get a sense that the agency's got stuff that they're not sharing with us. So one of our guys who, a spy is a spook. That's the terminology. And we got a guy in one of our squads that just understands spooks. He for whatever reason, he spoke their language, he understood them. So he goes down and he comes back with a treasure trove of information that was pertinent to our case. And we're like, how did you get that out of him? He said, because when I got down there, I realized they were holding out on me. And I told them I was going to arrest every one of them for obstruction of justice. And I got a United States attorney that I'm going to dial up and I'm going to lock every one of them up if they don't give up the information. So they give it up. And then we're going like, how dare those guys, they were lying to us. They were holding out on us. And he says, hold it. They lied to each other. You think they're going to tell us the truth? And we're like, that's a good point. They need to know, and different operations is extremely important. What they do, don't diminish the importance of what they do. The intel operations around the world, on all those guys on Hezbollah got blown up because they were wearing their pagers and their phones and everything were blown up. That's a long-term intel op. If the CIA didn't have a hand in it, their cousins with the Mossad did. Those are necessary operations. Those are hard to set up. They take years. And there's a lot of emotional casualties along the way, and then they do spectacular things.
That was brilliant. They will talk about that for years. That was brilliant. That play, that move, incredible.
There ain't anybody in law enforcement. I mean, I'd been out for a while. When that happened, we all just went like, wow. Wow.
What a move.
What it took to set that up, the planning, how they got into those guys, how much patience, need to know.
Yeah.
Tons of people in the Israeli government had no idea that thing was going down.
Yeah.
And then in one fell swoop, and that's an intel operation, long term. The Bureau could never pull anything like that off. You need an intel agency to do something like that.
Yeah. Well, I hear that Mossad is ruthless. I hear they don't care. There's no rules. While with FBI, there's rules. Even with CIA, there's rules, there's boundaries. But with Mossad, they don't care. If they want to kill this person here, they'll bomb that place and kill 1,000 people around it. Is that true?
I can't say directly. I got no direct knowledge of that. Historically, for example, a lot of that came up as a result of the Munich Olympics, 1972, when Black September killed all those Israeli athletes. And Mossad hunted them down one at a time and killed every one of them except one. And the one who survived actually was in a documentary called One Day in September, which is a riveting documentary.
Wow.
But yeah, they're tasked. That's their job.
Yeah.
So those guys, I don't think they're enthusiastic about, the collateral damage. They're going to try to be as surgical as possible about that, but because the blowback politically is damaging. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Mossad's on your trail. There's pretty good chance they're going to get you.
Yeah. Have you had much dealings with Mossad?
Minimal. Just minimal. Okay. We crossed paths with them briefly one time in New York. We had some people under surveillance, and they turned out to be Mossad. Agency told us to leave them alone. We're like, all right, we're out.
Got it. How long were you in the FBI for?
Total of 24 years.
24 years. Okay. And were you there during 9/11?
I was on a different mission. I was a full-time hostage negotiator. We were about halfway through a kidnapping in the Philippines at the time.
Okay.
And so the Burnham-Sabero case had been going on for about 9/11 September. Burnham's got grabbed, I think, in May, just prior. And so we're in the midst of this kidnapping, and then 9/11 happens, and they got to involve us. But I got a kidnapping, and it turns out the kidnappers are Al-Qaeda related in the Philippines. So I got to stay on that kidnapping, and I still got to help out however I can on 9/11. So tangentially, I was in the Bureau and I was working related stuff, which was an Al-Qaeda kidnapping in the Philippines.
Got it. We talked about before how amazing the Mossad or the CIA execution was with the pages that they did.
Yeah.
More recently, something that they'll also study for years to come is what America did with Venezuela.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's also something to be written about and talked about for years.
Yep.
For you to pin precision, go on top, get all the electricity out in the city, nobody can get anywhere, bang, you go in, remove, go. From the bunker.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's a great op. And it was spectacular. Planning.
Yeah.
And to me, the everything about that, which, the Trump administration these days, they're not into regime change. You notice their operations are like, I don't care. Their approach is, we don't care who's in charge in your government as long as you're playing fair with us and everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so then, if you, as an individual, enough of a problem, then there's a pretty good chance. And he doesn't want to remove. I mean, he does everything he can possibly do to get you to cooperate. But the thing that was interesting about that was he takes Maduro out. He doesn't support the opposition. The opposition who won the election apparently legitimately anyway, who ought to be in charge. They're like, oh, awesome. So you're going to install us. And he's like, ain't part of the plan at this point in time. So the surgical precision of that, trying to leave the infrastructure in place, saying like, you guys are the rest of the government's in charge. What usually happens if you're going for regime change is it collapses into anarchy, and then really more people get killed than need to get killed. The anarchy is ruthless and vicious, and the death that follows attempted regime change. Bodies are in the streets. And he's not into that.
Now, Trump. You've met him.
I've crossed paths with him, yeah.
Many times. From back in the day, you had that charity thing that you did in his apartment.
Right.
Years ago.
Yeah.
And you also know the person that did his wedding, for the first wedding that he had.
That was our connection. His minister, who he was close to, I was close to.
You went to the same
also.
church.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of Trump?
I like him.
Yeah, I like him too.
I think, I think what he's done, foreign policy, Middle East, I think he's the best American president for the Middle East since World War II.
What do you think he's going to do with Iran? Because they negotiated today in Oman.
Yeah.
Which it's still closed doors. They haven't come out yet.
Yeah.
I'm Persian, by the way. I'm Iranian.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm following it closely.
Yeah.
You're saying he's not seeking regime change.
That's the last thing he wants. Now, if you're going to force his hand, because he had a shot at that over the bombings. Israel, when they bombed the nuclear facility, Israel tried to talk him into taking out the leader.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
He's just like, all right, look, start playing fair with everybody. You play fair with everybody, you're going to be fine. And fairness is basically a two-way street. He's not enthusiastic about how many, in the demonstrations, clearly how many Iranians have been killed by the regime. But the problem is also, you take out the regime, what happens when it collapses? ISIS springs out of the U.S., the coalition taking the government of Iraq out. And then the region descends into chaos and the bloodshed as a result. And then ISIS then becomes this cancer that spreads across the region, which they're only now sort of emerging from. And so you take out a regime, we take out the Libyan government falls into chaos. Mm. The Arab Spring of what was it, 10, 12 years ago or so, which was delightful when it happens. Mm. And then the region falls into chaos.
But can't you do a Venezuela situation?
Well, yeah, you're taking out a leader. He's leaving a vice president in charge and saying to the vice president and everybody else, like, look, let's get a two-way street going here. Collaborate with us economically. Let us buy your oil. You're going to get the money and we'll be fine.
But see, he's telling a president of another country to stop killing your own people. Isn't that crazy? That's not your country, and you care for them more than the leader of that country.
And yeah, you know, and the American approach to it all along, like the American approach historically has been like, all right, so we're going to invade your country. We don't like what you're doing. At some point in time, we're so fed up with you. We're just going to invade your country. We don't like what there was going on in Iraq. We invade. We don't like what's going on in Afghanistan. We invade. And then we don't like what's going on in Vietnam. We invade. And then what happens? Like this mess that goes on for 20 years and which is never settled until eventually America gets tired and leaves. And then the region descends into chaos, and God knows what's going to emerge as a result. Mm-hmm. And he's just not interested in triggering those kind of messes.
Have you pulled back the curtains and seen what goes on behind war? Is it all theater, or did you...
What goes on behind?
The decision-making behind war in the FBI? I mean...
No, we're not really involved in that.
Okay.
I mean, the Bureau of CIA, we all kind of do what the people in charge are telling us to do.
Got it.
A lot of the controversy these days is, ICE is so unpopular in the U.S., and I did an interview with the New York Times not that long ago, and they're trying to pin me down on, should the guys in ICE, if they don't like what their boss is telling them, should they refuse to do it? And the answer is, well, we got a system that's set up that's not supposed to tolerate that.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do what the people in charge are doing, what the legitimate elected political leaders are asking, then you probably ought to quit.
Yeah.
It's just, so we're not, but, your original question, are we involved in a decision to go to war? No. The politicians are. We do what they tell us to do.
Yeah, but is there whispers around office where it's like, this is all theater, it's not real?
No, I don't think so.
No? It's not like that?
No, I never saw anything like that.
Do you want a coffee?
Thank you, but no.
No?
Yeah.
No coffee?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. I caffeinated just before you picked me up.
What about a tea?
Are you recommending a tea?
Let's see what they got. Are they open? Can you beep the horn? Yeah. Can you go a little bit forward? Let me see if they're open. All right, let's go somewhere else. I think they're closed. I saw a Starbucks around the corner as well. We can go there. Yeah, we'll get a tea or something.
All right.
All right. Okay, so when you were in New York and you were, in the FBI, did you have much dealings with the mafia?
I didn't work that side of the street.
Got it.
I worked terrorism the whole time I was there. When I got there, it was mostly domestic. And then, with the World Trade Center, it evolved into very international.
Yeah.
And, plenty of guys working organized crime, doing great work. Great work.
Mm.
But I never worked that.
Okay. As somebody that worked in FBI for 24 years, what do you know about Jeffrey Epstein?
Nothing.
No.
Yeah. Now, he started really gathering his influence, and clearly he had tons of influence. Kind of after my time. He started evidently gathering ground, on so many. It's not that the percentage of men in powerful positions are that susceptible to that kind of influence, dangling females in front of him.
Hmm.
He doesn't care what his win rate is.
Hmm.
He just needs to keep dangling females till he finds people that are vulnerable to the influence. It's kind of like, a cult leader. Hmm. They just keep going till they find people that are vulnerable to the nonsense that they're spreading around. So, yeah, but not only what's been reported on Epstein is in the media, and no other knowledge of him other than that.
You never met him, seen him, nothing like that.
There ain't no pictures of me with him. I'm not in any emails.
I mean, if there was,
you know what? And you're not going to find it. What I would love, it wouldn't be bad. Like if there was a picture of me and Diddy and Epstein, like I would brag about that.
I can make that on AI.
Yeah,
I can make that for you if you want.
You know, when Dave Chappelle's got this hysterical routine where he says, you know, I see this guy with Diddy and I see that person with Diddy. And the only conclusion that I could draw is I'm ugly. Why didn't I get invited? I wasn't pretty enough to ever go to a Diddy party. Damn it. I'm ugly.
So good.
I left out. I feel left out. You got to be able to laugh about
so
this
good,
stuff,
of
right?
course.
Yeah.
I remember Dave Chappelle also has another skit about R. Kelly. And he said, what do we lock up R. Kelly for? For pissed on his fans? If I can't piss on my fans, fuck it. I don't want to be famous. I mean, if you were in any photos with Epstein, it's probably better to say it before it comes out. A lot of these guys, right? They don't say anything until the photos come out and the emails come out, which is probably the worst thing to do. You should come out and say something before they come out.
And after it comes out, they go, I'm sorry, I embarrassed my family. Like, if you were sorry and you embarrassed them, you'd have said something before the stuff came out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
you're sorry you got caught. Is what you're sorry about.
Exactly. I guess, you know, you were the top negotiator for the FBI. In a way, you were the face of FBI to every terrorist face.
There were other faces on a team. I'm not the only face on a team. I just happen to have that part of it.
How come the algorithm loved you so much and now you've just blown up?
Because the book has done so well?
The book is, by the way, there's a lot of real estate agents in this town.
Yeah.
And they all rave on about your book.
Here's the biggest difference in why that book has done so well. Because Tal Raz was a co-writer. Like, Tal is a genius writer. And there is so much more to his writing that really meets the eye. And a lot of it is, because I'm not a writer. You know, I knew the subject matter. I needed to find a guy who could write. You know, hire the guy that wrote the book that you want to write. And Tal was a writer with Keith Frotze's book, Never Eat Alone. And that's a great book. And I always loved that book. Mm. And when I found out, besides the way he organized it and the way he thinks, when you work with Tal Raz, Tal will do an in-depth dive on a material himself. Now, most co-writers are only going to take the information that you give them. Mm. And they're not going to do an in-depth dive. Like, Tal goes out there and he reads everything about that. You know, I said to him one day, like, you know, this one guy told me he had to read every book about negotiation. He goes, yeah, that's what I did when we were working together. So he goes and reads everything. So he's a deep researcher. And then while you're working together, he doesn't take the stuff you say at face value. Like, I can remember at one point in time, he's like, all right, so what about using anger to get your way in a negotiation? I'm like, it's a stupid idea. And he said, okay, so first of all, that's not a great way to answer that question. And then he says, number two, you got to know that there's a study out there that calls it strategic umbrage. And that strategic umbrage is an effective way to negotiate. So you got to come up with a more thorough answer than that. Now, that's a guy that did his research and then is going to hit you with a really good question. And any other writer that I ever worked with, if they say, what about using anger? And my answer is, it's a stupid idea. They'd be like, oh, okay, that's the answer. You know, they would never challenge you on the depth of the answer.
Sure.
And there were other times when we were working with Tal. I was working with Tal. My son was very involved in a book. And we'd answer something and Tal says, that makes sense to you because you've been doing this for so long and you've forgotten what it's like not to know. And the people that are reading the book don't know yet. So you got to explain it in a way that somebody that doesn't know understands it. So there's all these nuances on Tal, the collaboration with Tal, and that's why the book has done so well, because Tal's a genius at a business book. Mm-hmm. Like if Tal wrote a kid's book or an autobiography Or there was another writer that I worked with that did a lot of collaborations, and they were phenomenal success stories, but they weren't business books. And since I wanted to collaborate, I remember thinking like, this guy's done New York Times bestsellers with some really impressive people. He must be good at collaborating. He was good at collaborating, but not on a business book. And so on a very, very specific type of book, there isn't anybody in the world better than Tol Ross.
What's a skill that you have that makes you an outlier among the masses?
I think I'm extremely coachable. Like, I don't care why something works. I just want to know what works. So I don't get really caught up in, I didn't think that was true. And I've been coachable. I know who to listen to also. Like, there's a phrase, never take direction from somebody who hasn't been where you're going. Never take advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with. So the vast majority of people that are giving you advice, they ain't been where you're going. Now they may love you. They may be really smart. But if they're not doing what you want to do, whatever they tell you is not going to be that accurate. And so being smart enough to listen to somebody who's actually giving you good stuff is a difference maker.
I think, in other words, you're saying you don't have an ego. Because I don't really feel like you have an ego. And the reason I say this is because I would say, if I was to answer the question, I would say you have enormous, exceptional emotional intelligence, where inside you're raging, but you're able to control that and say what you want to say to be able to resonate with that person and get what you want and get the outcome.
Well, there's kind of two separate things there that you talked about. How much emotional intelligence does somebody have, and then whether you got an ego. Now, I don't have an ego about learning.
Ego about being told how to do something.
About being guided, told how to do something, and then being lucky enough. Now I have a far better way to filter. Like if you haven't demonstrated to me that you know what you're talking about by doing it, then I'm going to ignore you. Now, the fact that you might be right isn't good enough.
Got it.
What's your track record? So like, there's an analogy I heard one time. Pilots flying a plane in a storm, and because of the storm, all his instruments go out. And a guy comes up from the back and says, here's what I think you should do. That guy might be right, but he probably is not. And he might even say, look, I've ridden in planes that have been in storms plenty of times, and I've watched them. So because I've ridden in a plane that's been through a storm so many times, here's what I think you should do. The question is, dude, did you actually fly the plane? Not did you ride in the plane. Not did you watch it being flown.
Sure.
Were you actually at the controls?
Sure.
Well, no, but, I rode in plenty of planes. That, most of the advice we get out there is people like, yeah, I rode in a plane. Let me tell you how to fly it. that ain't good enough. And so distinguishing those people, and at different points in time, I listened to them. I did what they told me to do, even though it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I'm like, all right, you must know what you're talking about. I'll try it.
You wouldn't say emotional intelligence? I feel like your emotional intelligence would be insanely strong.
Is something anybody can grow.
Okay.
Now, how quickly you grow it depends upon how much you cling to your ego when somebody tells you something that doesn't seem to make sense. Like, I wanted to be a hostage negotiator. I went to the woman who was in charge. She disqualified me on all counts, legitimately. And I said, what should I do? She said, you want to do something? Go volunteer to Suicide Hotline. I'm like,
and you did?
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't see why that makes any difference. I don't know what I'm going to learn, but she said, go do it. And then I went and did it. And I came back to her later. She said, you're 1 in 1,000.
Because you listened.
And I did it. Like when I came back to her after I'd been volunteering, like I didn't even come back to her while I'm training. I went through the training and I was volunteering for about 5 months. And at that point in time, I thought, okay, I've genuinely followed your advice. And I go back to her and she's like, what? She was shocked. I'm like, why are you shocked? You told me to do it and I did it. She goes, I tell everybody to do it. Nobody does it, which is stupid.
Is it New York?
Yeah.
Yeah. You said it in a New York way too.
Yeah, they trained me in New York. They got the Iowa out of me.
Yeah. Speaking of suicide hotline that you worked at, is there any situations that have left you haunted from that?
From the hotline?
Yeah.
No.
No.
There have been plenty of stuff. You know, if you're a hostage negotiator, you work enough cases, things are going to go bad. There's no way around it. There's no way around it.
93% success rate.
Right.
7%.
Yeah.
No.
There you go. You've done your homework.
Thank you.
You know, so once you get above 10 cases, just based on the numbers, things are going to go bad.
Tell me a story from the 7%.
Well, first time I was on a case where things went bad, the bad guys didn't kill the hostage, the Bruno Sabero case. They killed Guillermo Sabero early on. That was before the government's kind of got their arms around what was going on. And they beheaded a bunch of other hostages, but it ended up with a friendly fire shooting. Martin Burnham was killed by friendly fire, and Gracia was wounded. She lived. And, you know, we didn't keep everybody together on that. Take a lot of stuff into account. It's a little bit like, because we had a case just before that in the Philippines, there was a spectacular success. Hostage walked away, not a dime was paid. And the whole approach was to wear the other side out. And they got so worn out ultimately that they just kind of let this guy go. They just had enough. And like any winning team, after they win a championship, the players are all jealous of I didn't get enough credit. I wasn't involved enough. I was ignored last time around. So we get another case on the heels of that one, you know, not 3 weeks after that first one is over. And the lack of cooperation across the board on all the governments, they were just like, I coached a negotiator who was a spectacularly effective negotiator, a Philippine hero. I mean, a hero and a patriot and spectacularly coachable. And well, I'm back 3 weeks later and they won't let us work with him because they felt that he was too influenced by the U.S. government. He didn't work for us anymore. He worked for the U.S. So they give us another negotiator to start out with who disappears on a regular basis. And then his mandate was, if you take a call from the bad guys, you got to at least record it. So we can listen to the recording and know what was said. If we can't be there, I got to know what was said. And he'd go MIA on us. We wouldn't see him. And then he'd show up and he'd go, yeah, I got off the phone with these guys about an hour ago. And, yeah, I didn't record it. Like, dude, what are you doing? But they wanted him to be more accountable to them, the Philippine government. And when I was in country, I'm like, you and I are going to be joined at the hip. You know, every waking moment, we're going to be together. Don't know when the bad guys are going to call. And when they're not calling, I got to get you ready. And after they've called, we got to go over the call and we got to tear it apart word for word. Here's what went well. Here's where it didn't go that well. Here's where we got to get better. And the first guy, you know, I mean, just dedicated himself to get better the whole time. The Philippine government, I imagine, in their head, they're saying, well, this guy thinks he works for the FBI. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to put somebody that's accountable to us. And that led to a lot of debacles all along the way. So it was the tides of history. You could be a great captain of a ship, and if the tides are bad, Ideally, you navigate them to the best you can, but if sometimes the tides of history and circumstances are just too much, no matter how good a captain you are.
But that doesn't sound like it's haunted you or it's traumatized you. Do you have one that's traumatized you? Did you see a beheading in front of you or something like that?
There was never a beheading in my presence. I've seen plenty of videos of it. And when we were working a first case, there was a Philippine general that I think was testing me. And he's like, yeah, I want you to watch this beheading of this hostage. And I'm like, all right. Whatever you want, dude. You know, you want to see if I can be bothered by watching somebody get their head on, head cut off. You want to see if I'm squeamish. You want to see what I'm made of. Fine. Show me go ahead and show me the video. Now, the funny thing about that story, when that went down, the negotiator that I was coaching that was very coachable, he told me after the fact he thought the general was going to shoot me because I got a little agitated with the general, and the general wasn't used to anybody being agitated with him. And as I was getting annoyed with him, he said that the table we were sitting at, I stood up. And he thought, the moment I stood up, he thought the general was going to shoot me and kill me. And afterwards, he's like, man, I was sure the general was going to kill you. And I'm like, that guy's a jerk. I don't know what he's thinking. He's pulling on us. I ain't squeamish.
Yeah. So you weren't. You can't be squeamish in that field.
No, I mean, yeah, you're a cop.
Yeah.
You see people that got killed.
Yeah, of course.
And if you're not used to it, then you go find something else to do.
Yeah.
Because they ain't looking for you to crawl up in a fetal position and suck your thumb.
Yeah.
When you start seeing ugly things.
Yeah.
And you're going to see them.
Well, you're from New York. Well, I mean, you spent a lot of time in New York, so you're used to shit coffee, so we're at Starbucks.
It's harsh.
New York has the worst coffee.
There are some places where it seems like that they haven't changed they haven't cleaned the pots in a while in some of the bodegas.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't say every place. Can we come to the window?
You can order there, sir.
So no, we can't come to what would you like?
Sorry?
I'm going to get a classic Cortago.
The hell is that?
Cortago.
Okay.
Yeah, Cortago.
Yeah?
It's just a little one. Yeah, you want one?
I'll take that as a recommendation.
All right, we'll have 2 of those. Hoss, would you like anything?
No,
you sure?
2 drinks, okay.
Yeah. You want a snack or something?
Well,
you want a waffle? Or a camel? You want a protein bar?
I would actually like to run inside and use their restroom if they have one I could use.
They do. All right, no worries. You want a protein bar?
Anything else, sir?
Protein bars would be awesome.
And I'll get a protein bar as well.
Protein bar?
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
All right. So I got 2 bottles of water in the door for you. I've got a salted caramel protein bar. Are you okay with that one?
I'm good with that.
I didn't know what flavor to get you.
Salted caramel works.
Yeah. I got you the coffees here. All right. And mine is here.
This is one-stop shop.
One-stop shop. Shoot content. Have your breakfast. Yeah, I'm not sure. I was hoping that was okay.
I think it'll be great. I'm getting ready to find out, but it sounds great.
I mean, what protein bar flavor do you usually get? Vanilla?
I usually eat protein powder.
But what flavor?
It's more easier to digest.
Digest, yeah.
Usually chocolate.
Chocolate
and vanilla.
Yeah, same. I'm usually doing vanilla. I've got a chef that bakes a cake for me. Yeah, I got a chef that lives in my house, game changer. She bakes a cake for me and puts protein in there. It's amazing. But it's not really cake. It's 4 eggs, protein Greek yogurt, which has 36 grams of protein in the Greek yogurt, and the protein powder, blends it, and then bakes it. It becomes like this pudding. It's not like bread. It's really nice. It's really nice.
That sounds great.
Well, I mean, I'd invite you over, but I don't think you'd come over, so...
Next time.
We're on our way. Cheers. Cheers, my brother. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I'm enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. It's a good conversation.
Oh, I'm glad. It's chilled. We're in the back of the car. We're talking shit. You know? By the way, what time do you have to be back?
I'm flexible on the time because I got to get up real early in the morning, and that's the only thing I got to worry about.
All right. So like 1 hour-ish?
An hour,
30-ish?
yeah, another hour would be just perfect.
Who are you here with?
My team, we did some training for a corporation here in town.
Got it.
And just finished today.
Got it.
And
so we're not going to the town and drinking after this, are we?
I'm getting back to New York because my girlfriend's birthday party is tomorrow night.
Oh.
And
okay.
She, as far as I know, I've managed to keep it secret from her that I'm going to be back.
Uh-huh. So you don't surprise her?
I'm going to show up as a surprise.
Beautiful. Well, I don't know what we were talking about before we got the coffee, but I have a personal question that I want to ask you. You're very good with your words. You're very good with, saying things to people in a way that doesn't offend them, to, suicide hotlines if they want to commit suicide. You've got a way of talking to them and everything. And that's such an important skill, especially in the world of business. Now, I don't know this about you, but do you have any business partners, or has everything you've done been solo?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs are mavericks. Now, when I started out, the founding and building of my company, my son was very involved every step of the way. And also Derek Gaunt, who I knew because he was a hostage negotiator in Alexandria, Virginia. So Derek and Brandon were pretty much there every step of the way. Brandon far more involved. Derek, we're tapping into him when we can as we're building it along. And then what ends up happening with my son, and I had a conversation with him to this exact regard 4 or 5 days ago. He don't want to be told to do what to do by anybody, including his father.
Is that ego?
The independence, you could call it ego, but the entrepreneurs are mavericks.
Huh.
And we want to chart our own course. So my son spun out of the company about 3 years ago, went out on his own, and is out navigating the world on his own. But he was critical in the early days when we were putting it together and before the book, and nobody knew who the heck we were. And we're running around giving training based on hostage negotiation. And people are like, what do you know? The bona fides are not there. Then I started teaching at Georgetown, and you get some more. But the business community, real world practitioners tend to be underwhelmed by academics. And so just because I'm teaching at Georgetown and then USC, I still look like an academic. And you guys got good ideas, but you're not feeding yourself based on your ideas. You're not eating what you kill. You got to get out here and eat what you kill. So my son was very involved, entrepreneurial behavior. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to make my own hours, chart my own course.
So my question is, being an entrepreneur and having business partners, so I'm assuming you then do have business partners, whether it's your son or it's other people. This is my theory, because I also am an entrepreneur and I own a few businesses with different business partners. The most important thing in a business is not the actual business, it's the business partnership.
Yeah.
Because fuck this business, we'll shut it down today. You and I can do this again together. So you must protect that relationship first, then the business. It's like a flame. You have to protect that flame from itself. So you have to know so well how to communicate with your business partner. If my business partner makes a mistake, I don't say, you did this, you were wrong. I say, we made a mistake, we shouldn't have done that. And he sometimes goes, listen, it was my fault. No, I agreed. I thought it was a great idea at the time. I make sure he does not go to sleep thinking, fuck Rudin. He highlighted my flaws.
Yeah.
Because I got to keep that relationship strong.
Agree completely.
I just want to know what your take was on all that, because obviously somebody like you who has incredible emotional intelligence, more than the outlier, more than the normal, more than the masses, you're an outlier when it comes to that. How do you deal with business partnership?
Well, for me, for my type, I'm assertive. There are three basic conflict types: assertive, analyst, and accommodator. And we each have strengths and weaknesses. And one of the principal weaknesses of an assertive is we'll come off as very transactional, and we're often insufficiently grateful, insufficiently thankful. So based on my type, I got to make a conscious effort to go out of my way to appreciate people. And that's been a difficult lesson for me because it's not just partners, it's also people that are working for me. We demand a very high standard of performance in my company. We want a championship team, and we expect you to act as a championship player. A lot of people don't realize, yeah, of course, yeah, I want to be an A player. Yeah. And then they're like, I got to be on time. All the silly little things that make champions. So I got to go out of my way to appreciate good work, to keep them going, to keep them motivated. Because if I come off as a demanding guy that never appreciates them, why are they knocking themselves out? So for me, gratitude and appreciation, taking care of the people that work for me, very much in a way that you're talking about taking care of your partners. Don't place the blame on them. Or if there's a mistake, I'm like, all right, look, here's where I screwed up. We had a minor mistake just a couple of days ago, minor mistake. And I'm like, look, I'm sure I screwed this up. The execution failed. Number one, I don't care. First of all, it's my fault. Secondly, live and learn. I don't care if you make mistakes. What I get upset about is if you don't learn from your mistakes. So for me, I see a very similar relationship to being careful with my employees that you're talking about being careful with your partners. Don't be ungrateful. Appreciate them and share responsibility. The phrase, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team. Same thing you're talking about. Okay.
So, that's really the key rule, isn't it? With people that have egos, I see them all the time. I know you don't like the word narcissist. Everyone you hate is a narcissist, right?
The adjective, it's a name of choice the person we hate is most popular. He's a narcissist.
Yeah, but I've genuinely dealt with narcissists.
Okay.
I'm sure you've genuinely dealt with narcissists as well. But narcissist to a point of delusion.
Right.
I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
So we can use that word, right?
We can
use
of course,
that word.
Yeah.
They exist. The word exists.
Without
so they
question,
exist.
yeah.
Yep. And I see these guys and they build more than they destroy. They go through a cycle of build and destroy.
Yep.
They're not able to actually continue building. Now, in every situation, it's best to stay calm.
Yeah.
Where is it appropriate to lose your shit?
I don't think it ever is. I have lost my shit plenty of times, and every single time I have ever lost my shit, I've regretted it and felt I made things worse. Now, losing your shit gets people's attention. It's a drug. It's addictive in the moment. You feel self-righteous. And the damage that it causes, even if you fix the problem, is always far worse long-term. Mm-hmm. Like I can't think of a single time that I haven't regretted getting mad. And as an assertive, then I'm a little more likely to snap out at people. Mm-hmm. And so I gotta, at the end of the day, 4, 5, 6 things have gone wrong. Mm-hmm. Last person that did something wrong, I got to be careful they're going to set me off, because I'm going to send them a bunch of text messages that I'm going to have to apologize for the next day. And I don't know how deeply I've wounded them, mm-hmm. Because assertives, we get over being wounded. Like we heal up like Wolverine or Deadpool. We get over real fast. Other people don't. Yeah. You wound somebody and, you stab me in the heart. Next day, I'm good with you. Yeah. I don't care. Maybe that night. But the other two types, the analysts and the accommodators, you wound them. They don't get over it the way you do. So you got to understand like how much you could scare them and how much you could wound them. And then you get them on edge, and the damage of that is it's just tough. So yeah, every time I've lost my shit, I've regretted it.
You've regretted it. But I have noticed, and I'm not sure if you've had this experience, but I've had this experience where people weaponize losing their shit.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
That's that strategic umbrage thing that I was talking about earlier. Because you can get results in the moment, quickly. It's addicting because it feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with anger, there's a self-righteousness that comes with anger. And you're in a downward spiral because anger is a negative emotion and you're dumber when you're in a negative emotion. And then when you see that you got these results, you're like, all right, that worked. And you don't realize how much you're hurting yourself over and over and over long term. Mm-hmm. And suddenly you get no results. You can't understand. You don't know why people are quitting. You don't know why they're not returning your calls. Like that's when more and more people simply start to ghost you.
Yeah.
You've taught them that you're going to be punishing. And the easiest way for them to avoid being punished is just to avoid you.
Correct. I've seen it. I've seen it so many times, and the outcome is always the same. You avoid that person because they weaponize overreacting and being dramatic. So when you're around them next time, you try to be on your best behavior to not tick them off because you just don't want to deal with that.
Right.
Sooner or later, you can't deal with this person and you start avoiding them.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a person that was using that, like, what happened? Why are people returning my calls? Or right after I get out of the bureau, and then I go, I go to Harvard, Kennedy School. And then I remember consulting with the CEO when I came out. So I'm just coming out, and this guy's known for being a hard bargainer, always getting the best deal. And he's like, I got an agreement on my desk right now. I cannot get the other CEO to sign it. We have gone through this slowly together, every step of the way. He agreed to every term. He won't sign it because I have such a reputation of always getting the upper hand. His board's going to fire him when they see that he signed a deal with me. Every deal with me, by definition, has become a bad deal for anybody that signs it with me. And that's what happens. He's like, I don't know what to do. The guy won't sign. Yeah, well, for your reputation of getting the best of everybody, that now nobody wants to deal with you.
Now, on the other end of the scale, what are some traits that you can do to make people like you, even in a manipulative way? If you're going somewhere, today I was with the ruler of Dubai's son. I went to his palace. Right? I showed you a photo before. If I go in there and I'm like, I really want to make this guy like me, what are the things that one must do to make somebody like them?
There's great power in deference. If you're deferential, and if you're positive and you're playful, and then what is charm? Like, what is actually charm? And Robert Greene, I've read his stuff. You got to read Greene's stuff. 48 Laws of Power and the Laws of Seduction, a couple of his books. It's got seduction types. And he talks about, I think the charmer is one of his types. And then there's a description in there, and a woman says, I met this one guy, and I thought he was the most interesting person I ever met. And then I met the charmer, and I thought I was the most interesting person he ever met.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Clinton was known for being a charmer, right?
Yeah.
Bill Clinton found a way to I never saw this, but I understand that he found a way to pay a genuine compliment to everybody he met. And when he spoke to you, you got the impression that he didn't think there was anybody else in the world. Not a compliment like, hey, love them shoes, and you got on tennis shoes. Like, they're throwing out flattery with no substance behind it. He'd take somebody in and figure out something they had on that they wore intentionally that meant something to him. He'd compliment it on them, so it was a genuine compliment, and then you thought there was nobody else in the world while he was talking to you. And so when you went to the palace, like if you're deferential with this guy and you actually pay attention to him and listen to him and actually listen, you're 90% of the way there.
Have you met Andrew Tate?
I have not.
He is a master at this.
Okay.
Would you like to meet Andrew Tate?
No.
No. Let's talk about that.
All right. So I don't know him personally.
Yeah.
And my interpretation is based solely on what's getting fed back to me through the media and through social media and the negativity surrounding him. It could be completely inaccurate and completely unfair. And I'm not, in my world these days, wading into that doesn't help me or the people that I'm trying to help.
Sure.
So I probably am taking an unfair attitude towards him because of that. But I got a serious following. I'm by substantive women that I'm flattered by the fact that they are fans of my stuff. Cody Sanchez, Lisa Bilyeu, just to name a couple. And I know there's just negativity in that environment.
Yeah.
And I'm not helping anybody by wading into it.
He's very good at what you just said. When you meet him, when he speaks to anybody, even if somebody approaches him with hate, they always leave thinking, he was such a nice guy. He listened to me. He focused on me. He let me talk. And even if you see him on interviews, they get ready to just drill him.
Yeah.
But they leave loving him. They finish the interview by respecting him.
All right. There could be a bunch of unfair stuff then about him.
But that skill of making people like you, that when you were telling me that he stood out to me. That's why I wanted to know if you've met him or not.
No, I haven't.
You know, in the movie, I'm sure everyone's seen the Liam Neeson movies where he says, I have a particular set of skills.
Right.
I will find you and I'll kill you. Right?
Yeah.
Would that work if you're negotiating with a kidnapper?
No.
That doesn't work. That's just movie fluff then.
That's movie fluff, yeah.
How would you deal with a kidnapper?
Depending upon the circumstances, it's not about my ego. It's about what's the maximum move to get the hostage out, to get the kidnapped victim out. Like, I'm not trying to intimidate anybody. In any given kidnapping, I'm trying to do two things. I want to preserve the victim's life immediately. First, lessen a potential harm. Secondly, work on getting them out with the least amount of time that passes as possible. And you got a real problem with kidnappers reneging on deals if you're in too much of a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say, no, that wasn't the ransom, that was a down payment. So you actually have to slow things down to ensure release. And then you got to go through the process so that once the hostage is out, you've laid enough groundwork that you're going to catch up to the bad guy. And so threatening them and calling them names ain't going to help. And it might trigger them into doing something negative just to prove that you're full of it.
Got it.
So you could lose a hostage by trying to be the dominant male.
Got it. Can you give me an example how you would do it if you were speaking? We don't need a role play. I just want to know, would you make them feel comfortable? You would what's the first thing? Like, it's not, I've got a set of skills and I'll find you and kill you.
Right.
What is it?
Well, the Liam Neeson thing, I've got a set of skills and I'll find you and kill you. There was no demand for the hostage. That was an abduction.
Sure.
So there's a difference between an abduction and a kidnapping. Is there a demand? And so then if there's an actual demand and you're going to be able to tell right away whether it's a pretend demand or an actual demand, then that's their objective. And so then the questions begin essentially are, if you want to get paid, you got to give me the hostage. And so you plant that in their head, and it's kind of like, how am I supposed to pay you if I don't know you're going to let them go? That's actually ask the legitimate question. If it's a kidnap for ransom, and likely if it is, it's in a country where they're going to get away, it's a whole separate ballgame. They got no problem letting the hostage go because nobody's going to catch up with them as far as they could tell anytime soon.
Yeah.
So the issue then just becomes the hostage is a means of getting paid. The hostage goes away, your ability to get paid goes away. It's just that's
correct. Well, there's no leverage.
Yeah, there's no leverage. On top of that, like if they actually want a ransom, they ain't selling my brother to my neighbor. My neighbor ain't putting up $100,000 for my brother. My neighbor probably doesn't even like my brother.
You can keep him.
Yeah, so they got one buyer.
Yeah.
In point of fact, in a kidnapping, there's one and only one buyer.
Yeah.
The family.
Yeah.
They ain't shopping them around to anybody else.
Yeah.
So if you accept that, then all right, look, you don't let them go, you don't get paid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Maduro got kidnapped. If you think about it, he would have a lot of buyers.
Yeah, well,
that's a different story. So, like, has there ever been any situations where the kidnapper has the transaction was successful, you've gotten the person, and the kidnapper has got the money, and you've never been able to track the kidnapper away, and should they run away into the sunset with the money?
Well, there's the whole process yields a massive amount of evidence if you bother to pay attention to it. And so with the amount of evidence that the process just generates, you're going to catch up to them. Now, it might not be today, but we caught up with kidnappers in Colombia 5 years later. Everybody that was the kidnappers of the Burn Up Sabero case, they got two problems. Number one, the U.S. is going to try and catch up with them. Well, that's probably number two problem. The number one problem is the Philippine government is going to try and kill them first. And so if the Philippine government doesn't kill them because they got embarrassed and they broke all sorts of internal rules, then military special forces, the U.S. is going to support some sort of special forces op on these guys. So if they don't get killed in the process, then there's an indictment in Washington, D.C., and eventually somebody, going to put handcuffs on them. We're going to drag them back to the U.S. You just got to be patient. So eventually we're going to get them. But their lives at their peril because there are people trying to bring justice to them in the meantime. So, there was a succession of cases that took place on oil platforms around the year 2000. And the same kidnapping gang was hitting the oil platforms and scoring really big ransoms. Every year it was around like October, I think. And so the third time they did it, they're like, all right, we're gonna do a controlled payment, and we're gonna trace the money. And then after the hostages are out, we're gonna follow the money. And over half the ransom was recovered, and the kidnappers' entire organization was taken out and arrested. And they never committed another kidnapping because their organization was decimated by the follow-on investigation. And the hostages were saved. So that's really what you want to do. The payment is a controlled buy, and the payment's evidence.
Yeah. So it's not a good business to get into kidnapping. You're eventually going to get caught.
Depending upon the country, you can get away with kidnapping in Haiti. They haven't been able to reestablish any kind of control in that country. Someplace else, Mexico, you're probably not going to get caught. Certain countries in the Caribbean, things may catch up. But the U.S. is always going to be waiting. The U.S. is always dependent upon local law enforcement, local military first. So depending upon how capable they are, then we'll have the issue of how much follow-on there is and whether bad guys are eventually brought to justice. Depending upon the country, Philippines were eventually going to get you. Mexico, probably not.
I want to talk about you personally, doing this job, going through this. Do you ever get empathy hangovers? You talk about sucking up their empathy and absorbing it and feeling their pain and kind of seeing it through their eyes. Do you ever have this hangover thing where it's like psychologists, they also need psychology. I used to date a girl that was a psychologist.
Yeah.
Part of the thing is they get therapy once a month.
Yeah.
Because they're taking on board all the other people's issues.
Yeah.
So did you have this empathy hangover?
For the bad guys, no.
Okay.
Like I would connect with the bad guys enough that sometimes the other negotiators are going like, I think you actually like this guy. I'm like, really? You put me on an op to go out and take him out, I'm going through the door first.
Got it. Yeah. But you would get it for the good guys.
Yeah, well, you're doing your best. I mean, it can be heartbreaking what they go through and their families. That's hard.
Do you hold guilt sometimes that you should have done things differently? Like, for example, if you were to buy more time and the person gets shot, do you in your mind process that as blood is on your hands?
Is the blood on my hands, and was I wounded by it? Those are two different things. I never felt that the blood was on my hands. Now, was it painful? Not as painful as it was for the family.
Of course.
And when you realize that no matter how hurt you might be by it, you got nothing on what the family went through, then you kind of say to yourself, don't be a crybaby. It wasn't your son. It wasn't your father. Get back to work.
Got it. So water for ducks back. It doesn't wound you and haunt you at night, sleepless nights and things like that. Nothing like that.
Now, as long as, in any failure, as long as you're trying to get better.
Sure.
Like when Martin Burnham got killed, I'm like, I'm never going to let this happen again. So, got to get better. That's the only choice. You get out, you get better, or you get out. And my choice was to get better. And then consequently, I think we ended up saving people's lives based on
what you learned from
the
that
dynamics from the Burnham-Sabero case.
Got it. I just want to know how you process it personally.
Really, for me, when Martin Burnham got killed, I used to refer to that as it's still the worst moment of my professional career. But I'm sitting listening to another hostage negotiator talking about a scene that he was on in The Negotiator in Washington, D.C., where a baby got killed. And telling a story, what happened every time he told the story was cathartic for him. He was processing the trauma of being involved in not being able to keep a baby from get killed. And I can remember at the end of that, when I'm sitting there listening to him talk about it, he says, I don't know why I make it a point to tell this story over and over again at the schools. I guess because I'm trying to process something bad that happened to me on a winter's day. And I remember thinking at the time, happened to you? What about his mom? What about his family members? And that's when I thought, I've been doing the same sort of, I feel bad. And yeah, you should feel bad. But in relative terms, it wasn't a member of your family that got killed. You got to pick yourself up and get going.
How do you negotiate with a man that wants to die? A lot of these extreme Islamic terrorists, they want to be martyrs.
Well, the vast majority of them say they're willing to die. There's a big difference between saying you want to die and saying you're willing to die. And then what's the issue at the actual point of decision? And I remember reading a book not that long after 9/11, and however many hijackers there were that hijacked those planes, let's say there were 13 or 14 of them, and they had an entire protocol that they were supposed to go through in order to execute the mission. And 90% of the protocol was psychological, because the people that manipulated them, and those are really the evil people, the ones that recruit the suicide bombers, they realized that anywhere from a third to 2/3 of them are going to chicken out at the last minute, no matter what they say. So the assumption that terrorists are there to die, even the people that handle them, no, they're going to have trouble getting them to go through with it. So not as many of them are willing or wanting to die as is perceived. Now, it's to their advantage. Their PR is that they're all suicidal. But the reality of running those operations, those recruiters know that a whole bunch of them are going to change their mind at the last minute.
Got it. So they're all talk.
They're all talk, and they're like, you get 17 procedures to execute a hijacking, and 16 of them are that you stay committed.
Yeah.
The real problem is not the execution of the hijacking. The real problem is, are you going to chicken out?
Yeah. I think how they manipulate their minds to be like that is to not care about this world.
That's part of it.
Yeah. This world is nothing. It's the next world you need to focus on.
It's not just that. It's not just that you're going to get into paradise. The mythology that they've sold in some quarters is you're going to get your whole family into paradise.
And 72 virgins.
Well, the 72 virgins is not as important as getting your family into paradise, because your family, otherwise, first of all, if you're being recruited to be a suicidal guy, you're probably the screw up of the family. You've been embarrassing and screwing up your family for years. You're not going to work. You're not productive. You sleep all the time. If you're Muslim, you're probably out drinking. You're doing all tons of stuff. You've been an embarrassment for your family. Your family's sick of your nonsense. The recruiters are looking for these guys, because if I don't just promise him paradise, but I promise his whole family paradise, when he starts to waver, his brother, who's been annoyed by him for 20 years, is like, hey, dude, stick to your commitments. Yeah. And because the rest of the family is like, we're dependent upon you to get us into paradise. You can't waver. So they understand in a recruitment process what causes people to waver. They got to build a support system around them, because the guy that they recruited to do this is probably a screw up. So let's put a support system around them. How do we get the family to encourage them? They're like, yeah, dude, you're buying all of us into paradise by doing this. Yeah. You need to keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's manipulative stuff.
Got it. It's not the virgins. I mean, the virgins doesn't even seem, have you had sex with virgins? It's not great.
Yeah, it happened once, and I think I was a virgin.
Wasn't great, was it?
No, I was horrible. Very disappointing.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Got it. So it's a way for them to help their family, really, or prove their family wrong. It's like, I'm getting you guys into paradise by sacrificing myself. Got it.
Yeah, and you go on, like, if you go into the Palestinian camps, which are really prisons for Palestinians. They're in Lebanon, they're in Jordan, I know the term is not exactly camp, but when I went into Lebanon in 2008, and we went into some of these communities that were behind gates. First of all, I'm like, they're not letting these guys out. They're not letting them integrate into their world. And then secondly, the people that are trying to recruit people to become martyrs, well, let's put up a mural of a guy that killed himself. and let's make him a hero.
Yeah.
And
Idolize him.
let's idolize this guy. And so on top of everything else, if you're a screw up, then the picture that they're painting for you is once you're gone, you're going to be an idol. You'll be a community idol. You could die a screw up or you could die a hero. All these tiny little things to try to get the people that are that vulnerable recruited into it. It's insidious. The real evil is the recruiters.
Yeah. You thrive in high pressure situations, don't you? I mean, you have to. That's your specialty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you would be calm in chaos.
Yeah.
Would you? Yeah.
Depend upon the chaos.
Like nothing's like if you and your missus are in an argument, I feel like you'd be calm.
Well, then a lot of that is dependent upon, my girlfriend sometimes refers to me as her emotional support porcupine.
You stink sometimes.
Sometimes I stink. Sometimes those barbs are coming flying.
Well, especially in a relationship, you know where to hurt.
It's not that I'm doing it on purpose, but she's, you snap, and the people that are close to you.
But they know how to make you snap.
Some do it on purpose. I'm lucky enough that mine doesn't.
Wow.
She does not. And I think that's very much, that's also a short-term strategy. Like if you're in a relationship with somebody that can make you snap, then they're probably getting their way through a negative behavior, but the accumulation of that is going to bring the relationship to an end.
Yeah. Sure.
And like my ex-wife, she used to, when we were working together, when we were living, when I was married and I was working, she used to love to ask me for money just before I stepped out the door to go to work. And she knew that I was on my way to work, and I'd get mad every time. And I need $20, I need $40, whatever it is. I'm short on cash. And I'd give her the money every time. Cause I got to go to work. I don't have time to talk about this. I don't know what's going on. Here's $40. Leave me alone. She always did that. But then ultimately there came a point in time where like, you know what? I'm out of here. And here's one of the reasons. I've been telling you this for years that this bothers me. I remember the conversation I had with her. I said, I want a divorce. I will tell you why. And I'm not going to say anything to you that's going to surprise you.
You left her.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I said, this is why.
Wow, that's statistically, it's the other way around. 80% of divorces are initiated by women.
Yeah, well, probably for good reason.
Yeah, but you were
the dude has become inattentive and taken him for granted.
Yeah.
And she's not interested in being taken for granted anymore.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I'm sure to some degree I was guilty of that. I ain't saying that I was without sin.
What's that shirt you always wear?
Deeply flawed human.
Deeply flawed human.
So I was giving a talk recently, and every now and then I had this conversation also with my son in reference to his mother. And the truth is, I said, there's no question I could have been a better man.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean anything would have been different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's absolutely no question I could have been a better husband.
Well, that was you at the time with the limited amount of information that you had. You can't change that. It's like wishing 2 + 2 didn't equal 4. That was you at the time with everything and all the information that you had.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you ever met a terrorist whose logic actually made sense?
No.
All delusional.
Well, it's not 1,000% delusional, but there's solutions.
Got it.
Majority of the time, they got legit complaints.
Yeah.
And they haven't been heard. Resorting to violence is after. You don't start with violence. You start trying to get people's attention. You start complaining. You start trying to collaborate. And it didn't get you anywhere. So you just escalate.
You know I could kidnap you right now. I've got you in my car. We can go to the desert. The hostage negotiator becomes the kidnappee.
Yeah, well, we go out in the desert. We could drive some dune buggies.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to tell you. That's what I'm going to tell you.
Yeah,
and then I'll take you there. But then you'd be so good with your words. that you just disarm the situation.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
But next time you come, we'll go dune biking.
I'll do it. That'd be cool.
Do you learn how to ride bikes, dirt bikes?
I have never ridden a dirt bike. I've ridden a cruiser, but I haven't ridden a dirt bike.
It's so much more fun on a dirt bike on the sand dune.
Oh, yeah?
So much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do that.
I'll do it.
Dune bikes is okay, you're driving, but like on a bike is so much better.
Yeah. I'll bet.
Yeah, it's right next to my house as well. So we'll go, next time you're here, we'll do that. Have you ever been in a situation where you just kept talking to the terrorist to give the sniper a clean shot?
I would be happy to do that. I have not done it.
Got it. So how in your situation, how have situations been disarmed? Just verbal?
You know, every contained situation, a hostage taking is either contained or uncontained. Kidnapping is uncontained. Every contained situation I've been involved in, I was lucky enough said, you know, we got everybody out. Nobody got killed.
Got it. You know, in the terrorist world, or in the, what do you call them? Do we call them terrorists? What do we call them? Who's the aggressor? What do we call the aggressor?
Well, you know, sometimes it's terrorists, sometimes just a kidnapper, sometimes it's a hostage taker.
The criminal.
Bad guy.
Yeah, the bad guy. In the bad guy's eyes, you are the face of the FBI.
Yeah.
The FBI is you.
Yeah.
You are the face. It's like I go to McDonald's right now and I order something, that person I deal with, that's the face. You are the face of FBI to the bad guy. Has that ever followed you home? Have they ever been like, who is this guy? Chris Voss. Where does he live? Follow him home.
No, and that doesn't tend to happen because there's kind of a set of rules. And if you're living by your rules, then no matter who the bad guys are, there's either a certain amount of respect there, or if they go after you personally, the storm that they're going to trigger in response is not going to be worth it. So it's going to be one of the two things. And every now and then, a bad guy will make the mistake of taking somebody in law enforcement out. And the storm that follows is so bad that sometimes the bad guys kill the bad guy that started the problem. Because everybody suffers.
Got it. Because you don't want to go against, I mean, the United States is the biggest gang in the world, right? You're going to go after them and yeah, everyone suffers.
Yeah. You know, and
that's
what
why,
kind of fight are you picking?
And that's why I'm so impressed with Iran to have the balls that they have to not fold. You know, they did a calculation of all the military equipment that Iran has, all the F-15s and the F-30 fighter jets and all the missiles, and they tallied it all up on a list, and they got the financial sum of it, how much it all costs, and it's what America spends in 5 days on military.
Wow. Oh yeah, right there you go. You're outgunned.
You're outgunned. Majorly.
Yeah.
So I always think, why are they just not folding? Like, how are you gonna?
What kind of fat bank accounts do they have in other countries?
Mm-hmm. The Iranians,
the Republican National Guard, the people that are running that operation.
Yep, the IRCG.
Every one of those guys had got millions, if not some of them billions, stashed in international banks and other places. You got your retirement set up with $4 billion in a Panamanian bank, or you own property in London, which you bought through some shell company. Like, it is a money-making operation for those guys.
Yeah. And I just don't understand why they're just run off into the sunset.
Well, you know, you're
but they're willing to die.
You run a criminal enterprise. You get addicted to running the enterprise. There's a certain amount of restrictions on you in the environment. Are you risking getting killed by your colleagues?
Mm-hmm.
If you disrupt the enterprise, you know there's all these calculations. You know, your money isn't any good if you get killed.
True.
So They are doing those calculations. The other guys don't want you screwing up their paycheck.
What is your gut feeling saying? Is there going to be a war and a revolution?
No, Donald Trump is not interested in inheriting a mess like Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan, where there's been regime change and then the U.S. pours in billions of dollars for 20 years and finally leaves with no return on investment. I mean, the Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, the amount of money that was poured into destruction, which was all gone. Like, he's a businessman. He's like, that's expensive. I'm not interested in that. I want to build hotels.
So your gut feeling is saying no. He's not going to attack. He's not going to do a regime
Not if
change.
he can help it. Not if he can help it. And that's with all the noise they're making. They're sitting down there talking to each other right now, aren't they?
But Israel's forcing his hand.
Israel's doing their best to force his hand, but he's also got enough of a relationship. He's not interested in regime change anywhere. His thing is, look, if we get along, everybody's going to be fine. And war is expensive, and war is an environmental disaster, besides being a humanitarian disaster. How long is it going to take to clean up Gaza? Like, even if you build hotels and get everybody's jobs, it's an environmental disaster. And he looks at this from very practical terms. Yeah, they're probably still finding landmines in Vietnam. That's been crippling the economy, which they just barely recovered from. What was it? The war, the U.S. was heavy into the war in the mid 1960s, and we're all the way up into 2010, 2015 before South Vietnam and North Vietnam are finally they're united and they're getting a decent economy. I mean, that's expensive. And he sits back as a businessman and like, I ain't interested in spending that kind of money and then having it all be wasted. That's my opinion of his assessment of it. So he's not interested in taking a regime out in Iran, because if you broke it, you bought it, and he doesn't want to buy it. That was a problem with the Iraq war, and Bush 41 kept telling his son, "What's your exit strategy? If you broke it, you bought it." And they pretty much ignored it, and they broke Iraq, and the purchase. Look at where that got us.
So if you're a betting man, which you live in Vegas, so you are, you would put your chips on no regime change.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, that is a last resort for him.
Yeah.
Absolute last resort.
Because I heard Israel said, listen, Trump, if you don't do anything, we're going to drop a nuclear bomb on them.
Well, what are people saying? And then of course, the real issue is, the problem is Iran's appetite for nuclear weapon. And there's where the actual line is. And as Trump's recent response to that was, he did his best to take out the nuclear facility without taking out the regime. And he's not kidding around about, I got no problem dropping bombs on your nuclear facilities if you persist. And I think he's gonna be willing to keep doing that till they get the message.
Got it. Because they're rebuilding now.
Yeah, of course they are.
Yeah.
They see it as leverage. They see it their desire. The Persians have a long history of being tough people that are adventurous.
Well, it dates back to 2500 BC.
Yeah. Never mind what the government is over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
What do the people have a history of? And deep down in their bones. And everybody has reason to be proud of their cultural history. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's a current government there that's convoluted, if you ask me. But they're hanging in there because, there's some countries, man, that they're just tough. And I think the Persians are tough. The Cubans are tough. And I think the Persians are the same way, man.
Yeah.
And look globally. You guys are all over the world and you're doing well.
Well, it's because the revolution happened and a lot of the greatest minds left. And you look at, I think there was something that Charlie Kirk said once, and they asked him, and he said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm Persian." He goes, "You guys are the best immigrants by far that we've had in the United States. You guys don't come here in dole bludge." The founder of Yahoo, the co-founder of Uber, and he just started naming these names. And he said, "You guys are hard workers and everything like that." All the greatest brains left.
There's a cultural ethic there, I think, that stretches back, how much, 23,000 years? 2500 BC is when the start of the Persian Empire was. So nearly 5,000 years, right?
It's very ancient. I mean, war's always been a disgusting thing, always been a bad thing, but war is so different today than it was then.
Yeah.
There was a war called the Persian Greco War, where Alexander the Great was in war with Darius III and the Persian emperor at the time. 60,000 soldiers died in an afternoon.
Wow.
In an afternoon.
Wow.
That is enough people. That is the amount of soldiers the amount of people that died in the Vietnam War for 20 years that died in one afternoon.
Wow.
And their deaths weren't bullets. It was slicing their throat.
Yeah, it's up close and personal.
Going through and making sure he's still breathing. Another one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's different now. It's much better today than it was back then.
In terms of the relative scale?
The barbaricism, I'd rather a bomb drop on my head than me having to get sliced up.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the number of people that are traumatized from being in combat, I think it's still pretty horrific.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, but it's more guilt, isn't it?
I don't know, because I haven't been there, and I don't have anybody close that to me has been in combat. But I think you get guilt. I don't think taking a human life is a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
And people struggle with it. You're trying to be a patriot, and then the actual act of taking another human being's life, people can imagine what it's like, but until they've done it, they don't know. And I don't think it's a natural act. And I think that's the other thing that traumatizes people a lot.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, you go to war and then you kill these people, and it becomes a bit of a video game, and you come back home and you're, what was that thing that PTSD?
PTSD.
Is that what it is? Yeah. War. Is there another word for it when it's caused by war?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's war's a horrible thing. I mean, hopefully one day in the future we've got one government body and it can be AI and everybody can ask AI. And then Putin says, "Hey, AI, I want to invade Ukraine." And AI will say, "No, you're not allowed." And you can't do it.
It's an interesting thought.
I think about this often. Have you ever let one hostage die to save the rest?
Absolutely not.
Never.
Wouldn't even entertain the thought.
So you've never been in that position, say?
Well, and Ibril's approach would never allow that.
Got it.
Yeah. So wouldn't entertain the thought. Wouldn't be something that I was ever presented with.
Got it. I don't feel like the job at all has affected you. I was going to ask you, has the job killed your ability to feel sadness? But I don't feel that at all. I don't feel like it's traumatized you in any way.
I don't think so. No,
I think because I think it's that logical part of your brain that you just say get to the job. That's the job.
Yeah. There's some things that there are different moments where you're like, all right, so this is if you're going to do this is what you're going to be faced with. And I was thinking about that a little bit ago, because when I probably the ugliest thing I saw was, I've seen plenty of dead bodies. I've never seen anybody get killed. I've seen dead bodies in person. But I went to NYPD's homicide course. It's a great 2 weeks course on investigating homicides. Now, those guys see some horrific stuff. And so one of the homicide investigators had a case of a boy that had been killed and chopped up, that he was still working. It clearly was something he was never going to let go, which was admirable. And then he shows us pictures of the crime scene. Oh. And I remember seeing that, going like, if you're going to do this is a playing field. Wow. You have to deal with this. If you cannot deal with this.
How old were you?
I was in I was in my early 30s. Now, I never worked child sex crimes, and that's horrific stuff.
Yeah.
I never had to face that in person. I think that's probably the worst of it all. And I'm not sure how I would react to that. And they don't make you do it if you can't handle it. But a lot of that stuff is like, look, either deal with this or go do something else, was my approach.
That would be tough. Just to see that scene. I mean, the homicide guys, they're the ones that see the dead bodies first.
They're there and they see it in person.
Yeah.
What that guy was showing us a picture of, he took those pictures.
Yeah.
And it was hard, because I had a son that wasn't that far from that age at that time.
Yeah.
But then I was just like, look, don't kid yourself about where you are.
Yeah.
And if you kid yourself about where you are, you're not going to do a good job, and you're not going to help the people around you.
Yeah. Now, when you were in New York, that was a different time to where New York is now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
There's a lot of gay people in New York now.
Well, there were gay people. The gay people. The characters in New York never really changed.
Really?
Because it was a much more dangerous city at that time.
Got it. So the characters are the same.
I think so. Yeah.
Got it. But I mean, it was much more dangerous than what it is now.
It was extremely dangerous.
There was chain snatchers.
Yeah.
All the time, like around the Diamond District, there was just guys that would just snatch your chain.
Yeah, well, you gotta watch, you're a bad guy, you gotta watch your ass near the Diamond District, because the people around the Diamond District know that you're a vulture and you're coming by. So they're gonna have their guard up. There's places far away where there isn't as much security that you're gonna get away with being a bad guy.
It doesn't really exist anymore.
Not like it did.
Not like it did. No, what was that like? Tell me what New York back then was like.
Well, if you're an FBI agent, you got a gun and you're trying to get bad guys, there are bad guys everywhere.
Sure. So
it's a challenge. It's, you like the fact that you can navigate the streets. You like the fact that you understand the rules, and, you want to get bad guys. If you're there to get bad guys, it's like, you want to be in a Super Bowl. You want to be in a Super Bowl, you don't. And we had a guy running the office in New York once that described being an FBI agent in New York as being in a Super Bowl every day.
Oh, wow.
And if you have the appetite for it, it's fantastic.
Wow. There are some things that you can't really leverage on and negotiate with. I mean, I'm sure you're used to negotiating with, people so much, but there's some things in life that you can't really negotiate with, right?
Depending upon your definition of negotiation, if your definition includes compromise, then I would agree.
A successful deal is compromise on both ends.
I don't know.
No?
No.
You do talk about this win-win.
Well, win-win is an actual application, as opposed to paying lip service to it. So, do you want to approach the interaction? Because there's always a better deal. That's the problem. There's always a better deal. So you don't compromise to get to a better deal. You'll never get to a better deal by compromise. And there's always a better deal. So you get two things that seem to be contradictory. So the real issue is, because compromise is lose-lose. Emotionally, when you compromise, you feel you've lost something. And that's a poor prescription for long-term relationship. So now changing to get something better, that's the approach. And why is it always there? Here's why there's always a better deal. Because both sides are hiding critical information. You hold back the stuff that the other side could wound you with. And if they could wound you, the flip side of it is, if they were careful with it, they could help you by an equal amount. So, but you're scared to tell them because you're afraid they're going to wound you. So you hold it back. If you hold it back, it's critical. If it's critical, it could change everything. The other side's doing that too. What I'm really trying to find from you is the stuff you're scared to tell me, because I could use it for so much good or so much harm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people compromise, because they're scared to reveal their close information.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next layer that blows your mind is, then nobody knows what's in the overlap. What happens when you combine this closely held information? You could create something that neither one of you imagined.
Mm.
Now that takes a lot of trust. It takes how you conduct yourself. That takes earning the trust of the other side.
Mm.
But when you start thinking about it, like three-dimensionally, there's always a better deal.
Mm.
Always a better deal. But you don't get there by compromise.
You negotiated with the bad guys to save lives. But what do you do when you face something where you have no leverage over? So maybe a health scare. How does the master negotiator negotiate when you're powerless?
Well, a lot of times the issue is, are you really powerless? It's your whole philosophy of life, which is kind of like summed up with, there's always one more thing you could do. If there's one more thing you could do that and see if it resets the chessboard. So there's rarely a situation where you're powerless. How willing are you to step into really difficult answers? How much trauma you're willing to put yourself through? And most trauma is relative anyway. Like in the United States, in the UAE, how tough is it here actually?
With what?
Anything.
What? There's some things that are tough, there's some things that are easy.
Some of the things that are tougher. But how often are you actually faced with, am I going to make it to sunrise? Am I legitimately have a concern for losing my life before the sun comes up?
God, no. We're in a bubble here.
Exactly. Or even the tough neighborhoods in Dubai are not tough neighborhoods.
There's no tough neighborhoods here.
Yeah, there ain't no tough neighborhoods here. So how tough is it here really?
Not tough.
Yeah, it's not. So what are you powerless over? It's so much of it is in relative terms. Unless you live in some place where you got a legitimate fear that you're not going to make it to sunrise because of the external environment, you're probably in pretty good shape.
That's also going back to the dating thing. That's also why you don't want to date a woman that was born and raised here, because I know that they've all got a chef, they've all had a driver, they've all got a maid. They don't know how to cook. They don't know how to clean. They don't know how to do the bed sheets. It's just not in the culture here. And same as me. I mean, I've got all that as well. Same as me. I don't do the bed sheets or anything like that.
Right.
So everyone's kept so isolated, and I like a traumatized woman.
Well, stress is required for growth,
Character building.
or you're like, if you're gonna for any growth at all requires stress.
Yeah.
If you're gonna work out, you got to stress the muscles.
Correct.
Now the issue is, you get overstressed, do you break down? And so then even the crazier thing than that, because you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. Nassim Nicholas Taleb wrote a really interesting book called Anti-Fragile, and he talks about post-traumatic stress growth. And the people who really hit the heights in life went through some horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And to really hit the heights, because then if you survive something horrible, then what your takeaway was, I can survive anything.
Yeah.
And then you lose your fears and you do phenomenal things. The problem with that is, as a teaching methodology, it doesn't work. Like it ain't a good idea to break somebody down till they're broken. Because a lot of them are never going to get up. And you can't destroy people like that. But extreme stress, you look at someone that did phenomenal things. There's a pretty good chance if they didn't experience extreme stress, their parents did, which meant when they grew up, there was no excuse for whining or complaining.
Yeah, I like a weathered woman. Been through some stress, been through some shit. You know what I mean? Build some character.
She then she probably less likely to take it for granted.
So I can have a conversation with her.
Have a conversation. She's not going to fold up at the I got to make the bed.
Yeah.
I got to do what?
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
The only thing, a woman who's had, any person, not just a female, any person that's had it too easy, then they're going to fold at the first sign of trouble.
Well, it's worse for men.
And
worse for men.
I think the world's a little bit harsher.
Yeah.
On a judgment.
Yeah. I have a final question for you. You've done podcasts with the greats, Lex Friedman, Andrew Huberman, Stephen Bartlett.
Chaco.
What makes them great podcasters? And brutally tell me, what do I need to work on to be great?
No, I think really it's the willingness to have an extended conversation and deep curiosity. And if you've got those two things, and this clearly has been not confined to an hour, you've got this environment that's conducive to a real conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of things. So, I've enjoyed this, and I don't know the entirety of the people that are following you, but this has been a fascinating conversation for me. And you're deeply curious.
Mm.
And that's just what it takes, which means however good you are now, you're going to continue to get better.
Mm. I mean, I'll do it forever. I love it.
There's another reason for, you're not doing it because you're trying to use it as I don't think you're doing it to get someplace else. If you love it, just doing it in and of itself is a hell of a reward.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference in a conversation.
But I mean, you're in a unique position where you sat with the greats. Andrew Huberman, great.
Yeah, I like Andrew a lot.
He's on the Mount Rushmore of podcasters.
Andrew, Lex, and Jocko are, for very different reasons, are phenomenal podcasters. I think along the same lines, Rogan.
Joe Rogan. Yeah, I was about to say.
Because
have you done Joe Rogan?
No, I haven't done Rogan, but I love listening to his interviews.
You have to.
Because every now and then he'll throw something out that just like you never thought of. And here's the wackiest thing. He's talking about hunting. And he says, all these people that, that they're watchers in the woods and that they're evil spirits out and that people disappear in the woods, and they want to attribute it to UFOs. He says, I'm a hunter. I'm out there all the time. You don't see the skeletons of the animals that die out there.
Yeah. Which
means that nature consumes things fast. Mm-hmm. So there's no boogeyman out in the woods making people disappear. It's just the way that nature works. And I remember thinking, how many urban myths or forest myths are just answered by that practical insight. He's deeply curious in his practical approach. And then I know Lance Armstrong.
Oof.
And I like Lance a lot. I really like Lance. And so the first time that I met him, I'm like, I got to get to know this guy a little bit better. Let me listen to the Rogan podcast. I know he's on Rogan. And so I listened to that podcast, and Rogan's ability, he says, so what'd you do with the yellow jerseys? Did they make you give them back? And he says, if I never give them back, I don't care what they accuse me of. If I got a yellow jersey, I ain't never giving that baby back. I'm hanging on to it. And so his ability to just, joke like a regular guy, insightful. And then the other thing that was fascinating about that was Lance said, well, if you notice, none of the jerseys that I was disqualified for were handed out to anybody else because everybody was doping. And then you wait a minute, let me get this straight. They hung you out they hung you for something everybody was doing because none of his jerseys were awarded to anybody else because everybody was doping.
Wow.
And then you're like, I'm a regular guy. So I realize
So why did they crucify him if everyone was doing it? Because it was the
That's
greatest?
a great question.
Because it's the greatest?
I think the real issue was, I don't know. I think the real issue was, as they're catching up to all the rest of them, they're saying, admit that you were doping and, we won't kick you out of cycling.